The smell of Tuesday morning coffee filled our kitchen when my world fell apart. I never thought betrayal could happen so quietly, like a whisper that changes everything forever. My name is David Chun, and I am 35 years old. I work as a teacher at Riverside Elementary School, where I spend my days helping children learn to read and discover the magic in books. I believe that love meant forever, that marriage was a promise you keep no matter what storms come your way. But forever ended on a Tuesday morning in October, when my wife, Sarah, told me she was leaving us for her boss, Michael Turner. Our 3 children were eating breakfast at our wooden kitchen table when she dropped this bomb that would shatter our family into pieces. Emma, who is 13 years old and loves to paint watercolor flowers, stopped chewing her cereal when she heard the tension in her mother's voice. The twins, Jacob and Lily, who just turned 6 last month, kept giggling about something funny on their morning cartoon show. They had no idea their mother was about to walk out of their lives forever, leaving behind only empty spaces where her love used to be. I remember every detail of that morning because it was the last normal moment our family would ever have together. The kitchen smelled like the vanilla candle Sarah always lit during breakfast. Emma's art supplies were scattered across the counter from a night before when she had been working on a school project. Jacob's favorite blue cup sat next to Lily's pink one, both half filled with orange juice that would go warm and forgotten as our world collapsed around us. Sarah sat across from me at our wooden kitchen table, the same table where we used to plan summer vacations to the beach and help the kids with their homework every night after dinner. We had bought this table at a garage sale 8 years ago when money was tight and dreams were big. Sarah had painted it white and distressed the edges to make it look antique and beautiful. Now she sat behind it like a stranger wearing my wife's face, her expression cold and distant. Her hair was styled in a new way that I did not recognize, swept up in an elegant twist that must have cost a lot of money at some fancy salon downtown. She wore perfume I had never smelled before, something expensive and bold that made her seem like a different person entirely. The woman I had fallen in love with used to wear a simple lavender scent that reminded me of spring gardens and Sunday mornings. "David, I need to tell you something very important," Sarah said in a voice that sounded too calm and practiced for what was coming next. Her hands were folded neatly in front of her, and I noticed she was wearing new jewelry, a gold bracelet that caught the morning sunlight streaming through our kitchen window. I have been thinking about my life for a long time now, about what makes me truly happy and fulfilled as a person. My coffee mug fell heavy in my hands as I watched her lips move, forming words that would destroy everything we built together over 13 years of marriage. The mug was one Emma had made for me in art class last year, painted with crooked letters that spelled "World's Best Dad" in bright blue paint. Now it felt like it might slip from my trembling fingers and shatter on the floor. "I am not happy anymore, David," Sarah continued, her voice growing stronger and more confident with each terrible word. "I need more than this house, more than our daily routine of breakfast and work and bedtime stories." She gestured around our kitchen with one perfectly manicured hand, dismissing the children's artwork that covered our refrigerator like colorful butterflies, ignoring the family calendar that hung beside the window, full of soccer games and school events and piano recitals that we had planned together just weeks before. "I need passion and excitement, and someone who truly understands the woman I have become." She paused, letting these words sink in like poison spreading through my veins. "Michael Turner understands me in a way you never have and never could." Michael Turner was Sarah's boss at the marketing firm where she had worked for 3 years. He was everything I was not: wealthy, powerful, sophisticated, the kind of man who wore expensive suits and drove luxury cars and took business trips to exciting cities. I had met him twice at company parties, both times walking away with the uncomfortable feeling that he looked at my wife like she was something he wanted to possess. Sarah had started working late more often over the past 6 months, coming home with stories about important clients and big projects that required her attention. She had started buying new clothes with money we did not have, explaining that she needed to look professional for work. She had started going to a fancy gym downtown instead of the little community center where we used to work out together on Saturday mornings. I had noticed all these changes, but convinced myself they were just signs of her growing confidence and success at work. Emma's spoon clattered against a ceramic bowl, the sound echoing through our suddenly quiet kitchen like a gunshot. She was old enough to understand exactly what was happening, and I saw the shock and pain spreading across her face like storm clouds gathering before a terrible rain. Her mouth fell open slightly, and her eyes filled with tears that she tried desperately to hold back. Emma had always been sensitive to the emotions of others, able to sense tension and sadness even when adults tried to hide it from her. She had been asking me for weeks if everything was okay between her mother and me, noticing the way Sarah had become distant and distracted, always checking her phone and making excuses to leave the house. The twins kept eating their cereal, lost in their own little world of cartoon voices and sugary breakfast that tasted like childhood innocence. "What about the kids?" I asked, my voice staying steady even though my heart was breaking into a million pieces inside my chest. I looked at Emma's tear-filled eyes, at Jacob's gap-toothed grin as he laughed at something on TV, at Lily's pigtails bouncing as she nodded along to the music from her favorite show. What about Emma's piano recital next week? She has been practicing that song every day for 2 months. What about the twins' birthday party we planned for next weekend? We already bought the decorations and ordered the cake they wanted. These were not just events on a calendar. They were the threads that wove our family together, the traditions and celebrations that made us who we were as a unit, as people who belonged to each other. Sarah shrugged her shoulders like these precious moments of our children's lives did not matter anymore, like they were just inconvenient obstacles standing between her and her new exciting life with Michael Turner. "You are good with them. David, you always have been better at the day-to-day parenting stuff than I am." She stood up and reached for her purse, the same designer handbag I had saved money for months to buy her for Christmas last year. It had cost more than we could afford, but I had wanted to make her happy, to show her how much I loved and appreciated her. Now she carried it like armor, protecting her from any guilt or responsibility for what she was about to do to our family. The children will be fine. Kids are resilient. They bounce back from these things faster than adults do. But I knew this was not true. I had seen too many children in my classroom whose parents had divorced, kids who struggled with feelings of abandonment and confusion, who acted out in anger or withdrew into themselves with sadness. I had watched them try to make sense of why the people who were supposed to love them most had chosen to leave or fight or hurt each other instead of working together to keep the family strong. "Michael is waiting for me in his car outside," Sarah continued, glancing toward our front window where I could see the shadow of an expensive sedan parked at the curb. "I already packed my things last night after you fell asleep. Most of my stuff is already at his apartment downtown." The next few minutes felt like watching a horror movie of someone else's life, like being trapped in a nightmare where nothing made sense and everything familiar was being torn away. Sarah moved through our house like a ghost, gathering the last few items she wanted to take with her to her new life. She took her jewelry box from our bedroom dresser, the one her grandmother had given her on our wedding day. She took photo albums from our bookshelf, but only the ones that had pictures of her alone or with friends, leaving behind all the family photos that showed us together as a complete unit. She took her expensive winter coat from the hall closet, the one I had bought her for her birthday 2 years ago, but left behind a handmade scarf that Emma had knitted for her last Christmas, dropped carelessly on the closet floor like it meant nothing at all. Sarah kissed each child on the head before she left, but the kisses felt cold and empty, like she was saying goodbye to distant relatives instead of the babies she had carried in her body and nursed and rocked to sleep through countless nights. Emma pushed her mother's hand away and ran upstairs to her room, her footsteps pounding on the wooden stairs like angry thunder. I could hear her bedroom door slam shut, followed by the sound of muffled crying that broke my heart into even smaller pieces. The twins looked confused and worried when Sarah said goodbye, but they hugged her anyway because they still trusted that she would come back soon, that this was just another business trip like the one she'd been taking more frequently over the past few months. "Mommy, will you read us our bedtime story tonight?" Lily asked in her sweet little voice, the same voice that had been asking for just one more story every night since she learned to talk. She held up her favorite book, a worn copy of Goodnight Moon, that we had read together hundreds of times, the pages soft and familiar from so much love and handling. "Maybe another time, sweetheart," Sarah replied, not meeting her daughter's trusting eyes, not wanting to see the confusion and hurt that was starting to show on Lily's innocent face. Daddy will read to you tonight. But we all knew, even the children in their deep unconscious way, that this was not about one night. This was about forever. The front door closed with a soft click that seemed to echo through our suddenly empty house, like the final note of a sad song. Just like that, 13 years of marriage were over, ended as casually as finishing a cup of coffee or turning off a light before bed. I sat alone in our kitchen listening to the twins ask where Mommy went while Emma cried in her bedroom upstairs, her sobs carrying down to the floorboards like the sound of rain on a roof. The morning cartoons played on, cheerful and bright, and completely unaware that our world had just ended. Jacob and Lily finished their cereal and asked if they could have more orange juice, their little minds not yet able to understand that their mother was not coming back, that their family would never be the same again. That first week without Sarah was the hardest thing I had ever experienced in my entire life. The children asked about their mother every single day, sometimes every hour, their questions like small knives cutting deeper and deeper into my already bleeding heart. Emma became angry and rebellious, slamming doors and refusing to do her homework, blaming me for driving Sarah away even though she had no idea what had really happened between us. She started wearing all black clothes and dark makeup, trying to match her outside appearance to the darkness she felt inside. Her beautiful watercolor paintings, once full of bright flowers and sunny skies, became stormy and abstract, filled with sharp lines and muddy colors that reflected her inner turmoil. The twins cried themselves to sleep every night for 2 weeks, asking when Mommy would come home from her work trip, and whether they had done something bad to make her stay away so long. Jacob, who had always been our little comedian, stopped telling jokes and making funny faces at dinner. Lily, normally our chatterbox who narrated everything she did throughout the day, became quiet and withdrawn, spending hours sitting by the front window watching for Sarah's car to pull into our driveway. They both started having accidents at school, something they'd outgrown years ago, their little bodies responding to the stress and confusion of abandonment in ways their minds could not yet express with words. I called my best friend Marcus Thompson, who came over every evening after work to help with dinner and bedtime routines. Marcus is a successful family lawyer who had been through his own painful divorce 3 years earlier when his wife left him for her personal trainer. He understood the unique agony of being abandoned by someone you trusted completely, of having to explain confused children why the person who was supposed to love them most had chosen to leave instead. Marcus would arrive at our house around 6 o'clock every evening, bringing takeout food or groceries for simple meals, rolling up his sleeves to help with homework and baths and bedtime stories. He never made me feel pitted or pathetic, just supported and understood in a way that only someone who had walked this terrible path could provide. You need to protect yourself and those kids, Marcus told me one evening while we washed dishes together in our quiet kitchen. The children finally asleep upstairs after hours of tears and questions and requests of their missing mother. His voice was serious but kind, filled with the wisdom that comes from surviving something that nearly destroys you. Sarah has made her choice, and now you need to make yours. Get a good attorney tomorrow morning. Start documenting everything that happens and fight for full custody of those babies. I did not want to fight about anything. All I wanted was to wake up from this nightmare and find Sarah making pancakes in our kitchen, humming along to the radio while our children laughed and played around her feet like they always had. But Marcus was right, and deep down in my heart, I knew it even though accepting it felt like giving up on the life we had built together. I had to think about Emma, Jacob, and Lily first, about protecting their innocent hearts from any more damage than had already been done. I had to be strong enough to be both mother and father to them now, to fill the empty spaces Sarah had left behind with as much love and stability as I could possibly provide. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 5 years and made appointments with 3 different family attorneys, determined to find someone who would fight as hard for my children as I would. I hired a lawyer named Jennifer Walsh, who specialized in family law and had a reputation for being both brilliant and compassionate. She was a kind woman in her 50s with silver hair and warm eyes that reminded me of my grandmother, the woman who had raised me after my own parents died in a car accident when I was 12 years old. Jennifer's office was filled with family photos and children's artwork, Clear signs that she understood how precious and fragile family relationships could be. "Your wife abandoned the children," she explained during our first consultation. Her voice gentle but firm as she reviewed the notes I had brought about Sarah's sudden departure. "That works strongly in your favor for getting full custody, especially since she left them to pursue an affair with her boss." We filed emergency papers asking for temporary full custody while we waited for the divorce proceedings to be finalized. Sarah's lawyer, a slick man in an expensive suit who clearly worked for the same firm as Michael Turner, argued that Sarah needed time to get settled in her new living situation before she could provide appropriate housing for children during her parenting time. But Judge Maria Rodriguez, a no-nonsense woman with 3 children of her own, saw right through this weak excuse for what it really was, an attempt to avoid responsibility, while Sarah enjoyed her new romance without the inconvenience of caring for children she created and then abandoned. "Children need stability and consistency above all else," Judge Rodriguez said during our first hearing, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen too many families torn apart by selfish choices and broken promises. They will remain in their family home with their father, who has been their primary caregiver since their mother chose to leave. I felt relief flood through my body like cool water on the hottest day of summer, washing away some of the fear and uncertainty that had been eating at me for weeks. My children would stay with me, in their own beds with their own toys and their own familiar routines, surrounded by the love and security they needed to heal from this terrible trauma. The months that followed were like learning to walk again after being badly injured in an accident. Every day brought new challenges and small victories, as I figure out how to be both mother and father to 3 children who were processing their own pain and confusion in completely different ways. I had to learn how to braid Lily's hair for school pictures and help Emma shop for her first bra, tasks that Sarah had always handled while I focused on things like teaching the twins to ride bikes and helping with math homework. I had to become an expert on teenage emotions and elementary school drama, on playground politics and friendship troubles that seemed enormous to my children even when they seemed small to adult eyes. Emma started seeing the school counselor, Mrs. Patterson, a gentle woman who specialized in helping children cope with family changes and divorce. Mrs. Patterson taught Emma that her parents' problems were not her fault, that sometimes adults make choices that hurt the people they love without meaning to, that she was allowed to feel angry and sad and confused all at the same time. Slowly, gradually, Emma began to open up about her fears that she had somehow caused Sarah to leave, that maybe if she had been a better daughter or gotten better grades or complained less about chores, her mother would have stayed to take care of their family. The twins needed different kind of support, more physical comfort and constant reassurance that I would not leave in the way their mother had. I started a new bedtime routine where I would read them 2 stories instead of 1, then sit beside their beds until they fell asleep, my presence a promise that they were safe and loved and would not wake up to find themselves abandoned again. Jacob began having nightmares about monsters that took mothers away, while Lily developed a habit of following me around the house, afraid to let me out of her sight, even when I was just going to the kitchen to get a glass of water or to the garage to put clothes in the washing machine. I made charts for chores and homework, colorful calendars that helped give structure and predictability to our days when everything else felt uncertain and scary. Soccer practice on Tuesdays and Thursdays, piano lessons on Wednesdays for Emma, library story time on Saturday mornings for the twins. I tried to keep their lives as normal as possible, while also acknowledging that our family had changed in ways that could not be ignored or wished away. We established new traditions to replace the ones that had been broken: pizza and movie nights on Fridays, pancake breakfasts on Sunday mornings, afternoon walks to the park where we could run and play and remember how to laugh together again. Slowly, gradually, like flowers growing towards sunlight after a long, cold winter, we began to heal. Emma started to smile again. First, just quick flashes when something genuinely amused her, then longer moments of happiness as she rediscovered her love for art and music and books. She joined the school drama club and discovered she had a talent for acting, pouring her emotions into characters on stage instead of carrying them around like heavy stones in her heart. The twins stopped asking when Mommy was coming home and started talking about their daily adventures at school and with friends, their natural joy and curiosity beginning to shine through the clouds of confusion that had surrounded them for so many months. Our house became filled with sounds of healing. Emma practicing piano in the living room, the twins giggling over their favorite cartoons, the three of them working together on art projects at the kitchen table where Sarah had announced she was leaving us. I learned to braid hair and paint fingernails, to navigate the complex social dynamics of elementary school friendships and middle school crushes. I became an expert on which foods each child preferred, which songs helped them fall asleep, which words of encouragement they needed to hear when they faced challenges or disappointments. Meanwhile, Sarah was living her glamorous new life with Michael Turner, the man who had promised her excitement and passion and freedom from the boring responsibilities of motherhood and marriage. I heard through mutual friends and social media posts that they had moved into an expensive apartment in the trendy downtown district, complete with floor-to-ceiling windows and a view of the city skyline. Sarah was wearing designer clothes and getting her hair done at exclusive salons, driving a new luxury car that probably cost more than I made in 6 months as a public school teacher. She was traveling to exotic locations for romantic weekends and business conferences, posting photos of herself at fancy restaurants and cultural events that I could never have afforded even if I had wanted to attend them. Michael Turner was everything I was not and had never tried to be: wealthy, powerful, sophisticated, connected to influential people in the business world. He owned a successful consulting firm that worked with major corporations, lived in a penthouse apartment, and belonged to exclusive clubs where networking happened over expensive wine and gourmet meals. But I had something he did not have and could never understand: 3 children who needed me, who trusted me, who were learning day by day that real love means staying even when staying gets difficult and unglamorous and requires sacrifice. I focused all my energy on being the best father I could possibly be, packing lunches with little encouraging notes tucked inside, attending every school event and sports game and musical performance, tucking my children into bed every night with stories and prayers and promises that I would always be there for them no matter what challenges life might bring. Our house became a sanctuary filled with the sounds of healing laughter, with art projects spread across every surface, with the comfortable chaos that comes from 3 children who feel safe enough to be themselves completely. We painted Emma's bedroom in colors she chose herself, soft purples and blues that reflected her artistic personality. We set up a craft corner in the basement where the twins could build with blocks and play with modeling clay without worrying about making messes. I learned to cook their favorite foods: Emma's beloved spaghetti carbonara, Jacob's obsession with grilled cheese sandwiches cut into triangles, Lily's preference for strawberries on absolutely everything, including pizza. These were the small daily acts of love that built our new life together, brick by brick, meal by meal, bedtime story by bedtime story. Then one cold, rainy Thursday night in November, exactly 12 months and 3 days after Sarah had walked out of our kitchen and our lives, someone knocked on our front door. The sound was sharp and urgent, cutting through the quiet evening air like a blade. The children were already tucked safely in their beds upstairs, Emma reading a book about dragons and magic, the twins finally sleeping peacefully, without nightmares for the first time in months. I was sitting at the kitchen table grading spelling tests for my students, red pen in hand, surrounded by the comfortable routine of work that helped support our little family. I looked through the peephole and saw a woman stand on my front porch, but she looked so different from the confident, glamorous person who had left us that for a moment I wondered if I was seeing things correctly. Her expensive designer clothes were wrinkled and stained, her carefully styled hair was messy and unwashed, hanging in limp strands around her face. She was crying, mascara running down her cheeks in dark streaks that made her look like a broken doll left out in the rain. It was Sarah, but she looked desperate and defeated, like someone who had lost everything that mattered and had nowhere else to turn for help. My heart pounded against my ribs as I slowly opened the door, not knowing what to expect, but ready to protect my children from any more pain or confusion. The cold November air rushed into our warm house, carrying with it the scent of rain and fallen leaves, and something else. The faint smell of expensive perfume mixed with desperation and regret. Sarah stood there shivering, not from the cold, but from some inner chill that seemed to have settled deep in her bones, her eyes wild and unfocused, like someone who had been running from something terrible and had finally run out of places to hide. "David, please," Sarah said through her tears, her voice breaking on every word like glass being shattered against stone. "I need to talk to you. I made the biggest mistake of my entire life." She stepped forward, reaching out toward me with one trembling hand, but I instinctively blocked the doorway with my body, creating a barrier between her chaos and the peace we had worked so hard to build inside our home. I would not let her destruction touch my children again, would not allow her to bring her drama and pain into the safe space where Emma, Jacob, and Lily were finally learning to trust and hope and dream again. Michael left me, Sarah continued, her words tumbling out between sobs like water rushing through a broken dam. He said I was too needy, too emotional, too complicated for the kind of life he wanted to live. He found someone else, someone younger and more sophisticated, someone without the baggage of children and an ex-husband and real-world responsibilities. She pressed her hands to her face, trying to stop the flow of tears that kept coming like rain from storm clouds that would never clear. I lost my job because of the affair, because everyone at the company knew about us, and it became too awkward and unprofessional to keep me on staff. I have no money saved, nowhere to go, no one else who will take me in. She looked up at me with eyes that begged for forgiveness and second chances, eyes that had once been filled with love for me and our children, but now held only desperation and the hollow ache of consequences finally catching up to choices. I know I hurt you and the kids terribly, she whispered, her voice so quiet I had to strain to hear her over the sound of rain hitting our porch roof. I know I destroyed everything good we had built together over all those years. But we are still family, aren't we? We can start over, can't we? People make mistakes and learn from them and become better. I can be the wife and mother you deserve now. I can make up for all the pain I caused. I looked at this woman who had once been my wife, who had given me 3 beautiful children, who had also shattered our family into pieces for a fantasy that had turned out to be nothing more than smoke and mirrors. I thought about all the nights I had held Emma while she cried herself to sleep, wondering why her mother had stopped loving her. I remembered Jacob's nightmares and Lily's fear of being abandoned again, the months of therapy and patience and careful healing that had finally helped my children feel safe and secure in their own home. I thought about the stability we had built from the ruins of her betrayal, the trust and love and hope that had grown slowly like flowers in soil that had been burned and poisoned but was now fertile again. Sarah, I said quietly, not wanting to wake the children sleeping peacefully upstairs, not wanting their dreams to be disturbed by the chaos standing on our doorstep. You made your choice 13 months ago when you decided that Michael Turner was more important than your family. You chose excitement over responsibility, passion over commitment, yourself over 3 innocent children who needed their mother to stay and love them unconditionally. She started to protest, to make excuses and explain how things had been different than they appeared, but I held up my hand to stop her because I had heard all her explanations before and they had never changed the fundamental truth of what she had done to us. Do you know what Emma went through when you left? I asked, my voice staying calm even though my heart was racing with anger and protective fury. She thought it was her fault that you left. She stopped eating for 2 weeks because she believed she had not been a good enough daughter to make you want to stay. She threw away all her art supplies because you used to tell her that her paintings were beautiful, and she thought maybe you had been lying about that too. Sarah's face crumpled as she began to understand the depth of damage her choices had caused, the ripple effects that had spread through our children's lives like cracks spreading through glass. Jacob went to bed for 3 months because he was so scared and confused. I continued, each word a small blade cutting through her defenses and denial. He used to wake up crying, asking me if he'd been too loud or too messy, wondering if that was why you decided you did not want to be his mommy anymore. Lily drew pictures of you every single day for 6 months, hoping that somehow her artwork would work like magic and bring you back home to read her bedtime stories and braid her hair for school. I paused, letting these truths sink in, watching as Sarah realized for the first time what her abandonment had actually cost the people who had loved her most. I can make it up to them, Sarah whispered, her voice desperate and pleading. I can be a good mother now. I have learned my lesson about what really matters in life. I know how to be grateful now for the simple things, for family dinners and bedtime stories and all the ordinary moments I took for granted before. But even as she spoke these words, I could see in her eyes that she did not really understand what she was asking for, what would mean to rebuild trust that had been shattered so completely. She was looking for forgiveness and second chances, as if they were things she could simply ask for and receive, as if healing from abandonment worked like a business transaction where apologies could purchase absolution. But I had learned something important during the long months of helping my children heal from the trauma she had caused. I had learned that love is not just a feeling that comes and goes like weather. It is a choice you make every single day, sometimes many times in one day. Love is choosing to stay when things get boring or difficult or inconvenient. Love is choosing your family's needs over your own selfish desires. Love is choosing to be present and reliable and trustworthy, to be the person your children can count on no matter what storms might come. Love is showing up consistently, not just when it feels good or serves your purposes, but especially when it requires sacrifice and selflessness and putting someone else's happiness ahead of your own. The children have found peace without you, I told Sarah gently but firmly, my voice filled with the quiet strength that comes from protecting people you love from further harm. They have learned to trust again, to feel safe and secure in their own home. They have learned that they are valuable and worthy of consistent love, that they do not have to earn affection by being perfect or convenient or easy to handle. I reached into my wallet and pulled out the business card for Dr. Rebecca Martinez, the therapist who had helped Emma work through her feelings of abandonment and self-blame. Get help, Sarah. Figure out who you want to be when no one is watching, when there are no exciting distractions or romantic fantasies to chase. Maybe someday, when you have proven you can be consistent and trustworthy and truly committed to their well-being above your own needs, we can talk about supervised visits. Sarah stared at the card in her trembling hand, then looked up at me with a mixture of anger and desperation that reminded me of a drowning person who realizes a life preserver being thrown to them requires swimming effort they might not be willing to make. You cannot keep my children from me forever, she said, her voice getting louder and more demanding. The manipulative tone I remember from arguments during our marriage when she wanted to avoid responsibility for her choices. I am their mother. I have legal rights. I can take you to court and fight for custody and visitation. But even as she spoke these threatening words, we both knew the truth that hung between us like a heavy curtain. Rights have to be earned through responsibility and sacrifice, and a daily choice to put someone else's needs ahead of your own comfort. You gave up those rights when you walked away from their lives. I replied, my voice steady and sure. When you chose Michael Turner over Emma's piano recital that she had practiced for months. When you chose your new exciting life over Jacob's bedtime stories and his need for consistency and security. When you chose yourself over Lily's innocent trust that her mother would always be there to kiss her goodnight and chase away her bad dreams. I started to close the door, needing to end this conversation before it woke my sleeping children or brought their hard-won peace crashing down around them again. But Sarah put her hand against the door frame, her desperation making her bold and demanding in ways that reminded me why our marriage had ultimately failed. Please, David, she begged, tears streaming down her face like rivers of regret that had come too late to water the ground where our family's trust had died. I am begging you to give me another chance. I have nothing left, nowhere to go, no one else who will help me. You are the only person who ever truly loved me, and I threw it all away for nothing. I looked at her one more time, this woman who had once been my everything, who had given me my 3 greatest treasures, who had also caused us more pain than I had ever imagined possible. I saw her standing there in the rain, broken and alone, and finally understanding the true cost of the choices she had made. But it was too late for understanding to fix what had been destroyed. You had everything, Sarah, I said softly, my voice filled with sadness for what we had lost and gratitude for what we had found in rebuilding. You had a husband who loved you completely, 3 children who adored you and needed you, a home filled with laughter and warmth and the kind of ordinary magic that makes life worth living. You traded all of that, I continued, watching her face as the full weight of her losses finally settled on her shoulders like stones, for a man who threw you away the moment you became inconvenient, for excitement that lasted only until someone more exciting came along, for passion that burned bright and fast and left you with nothing but ashes and regret. I gently moved her hand away from the doorframe, my touch kind but final, the gesture of someone who has learned the difference between compassion and enabling, between forgiveness and foolishness.